everybody. Welcome to Medicine with Meaning with Dr. Julie Ta, the show that will bring meaning to medicine, healing, and to all layers of well-being. Dr. Julie, how are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing well. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Beautiful. So please tell us a little bit about your story. Can you share about where you were born, your family's move to the U.S., and how that shaped your path in medicine?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Southeast Asia in a country called Myanmar. It was formerly known as Burma. And I would say that I would not be a doctor today if it weren't for the fact that my parents immigrated to the United States when I was 6 months old. So, and I'll explain a little bit more. Around that time that I was born, the Burmese government had created a new law that barred non-citizens from attending university. So being of Chinese descent, I would not have been allowed to attend university. So I am very grateful that my parents had the opportunity and the courage to come to this country. And I often think about what my life would have been like had they stayed in Myanmar. It would be very different from today. And very certainly, I don't think I would be a doctor.
And what influence did your father have on you becoming a doctor?
Yeah, so my father is also a physician, and he was very influential because he was the reason we had the opportunity to come to the United States. So I think it was 1971, he earned a residency training program in Boston, and that allowed us to immigrate to the United States. And I think the other factor is that my father did not accept that his daughter would not be able to attend university. And so he found a place where I had the freedom to choose my own career path. And so I would say he was very instrumental in that sense. But I would say I was also motivated to pursue medicine because I saw the gratification that my father experienced in helping people with their health. And I would say my father is a wise and compassionate soul who inspires me and certainly guided me along my path.
That's really beautiful when something so purposeful comes from a parent.
Yeah. I mean, I think reflecting about that today just deepens it for me. Like, I feel I owe my father a lot.
I'm sure he is really proud of you. You mentioned before how your mission trip to El Salvador was a turning point. What did you see there? What was it that brought in your mind in terms of medicine?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the experience. So it was during my 4th year of medical school. I had the opportunity to take a whole year off and work in rural El Salvador with Doctors of the World. We operated a rural clinic where we provided basic health care, and we trained local people to function as health promoters in their communities. We also conducted public health projects like building latrines. We had nutrition projects where we taught farmers to grow soybeans as a source of protein. Soybeans are not native to Latin America. I saw how lack of access to health care negatively impacts health. And I saw how lack of access to nutritious food negatively impacted health. But I think what was most compelling was I arrived right after the end of the Civil War. And so I saw how trauma impacted the people. But I also saw tremendous resilience and strength. The Salvadoran people have a really good sense of humor, and so I often saw that as well. And so what I saw was the beauty of the human spirit. And when combined with community, I was able to witness how people can overcome so much adversity and it was very inspiring. And I often say or feel that I received way more than I gave. And it was just very instrumental as the beginning foundation of my journey into medicine and becoming a doctor.
So would you say it shaped the way you were going to be as a person who offers medical care to others? The way you would treat patients? Well,
Yeah, I would say all of the above. When you look at the macro system in terms of the social economic situation, you understand how that impacts health. But, coming to the micro system where I know I can have more impact, I think what was so beautiful was the connections that I made there, the friendships, and seeing how a community was able to thrive even during trauma and adversity, and that there was joy and there was connection. And I got to witness that. And that motivated me to see that there's something beyond just delivering healthcare. Yes, that's important, but I was able to see how a community can thrive. And I don't think we have that opportunity. In the United States, if you don't belong to a certain community, it's not so clear. Whereas there was a village where I lived and I saw all the members of that community. I interacted with them. So the idea of community was very clear. Strong community is important for health and well-being. It's a part of it. And I think we know that now. I didn't know it back then. It was, dare I say, I think it was 1996. We didn't have such clear ideas of what are the components that keep us healthy beyond, the obvious things.
yeah, I think back then no one sat there to analyze and think, oh, why are these people thriving? Or why are these people in this town feel more joyous? Like you said, now we have more of that understanding through observation, perhaps. And was that what led you to explore the mind-body connection, or what showed you the limits of medicine alone?
Yeah, it was the foundation, but I think it was really after graduating from residency. I taught and precepted internal medicine residents in their outpatient clinic, and they would often present cases where it was hard to explain the patient's symptoms from a purely biomedical model. So, for instance, we would have somebody with chronic back pain, but the imaging study was normal. Or another patient I remember with chronic, daily, unrelenting headaches. And at that time, I didn't understand, root causes, or I didn't have the tools to help people beyond providing pain medication. So, it was quite frustrating. And then, during my coursework for, my master's in public health, I attended a lecture on mind-body medicine, and it was so exciting. It's kind of funny that, learning that the mind and the body connected was like exciting news to me. But what was exciting was learning the scientific connections between the mind and the body, and learning about how stress can impact our health. I didn't learn about this in medical school, and maybe because I went to medical school so long ago, and hopefully they're teaching that today, but it was very exciting to me, and I knew it gave me a clue to help our clinic patients, that it might be related to ongoing stress, or, not having tools to help mitigate that stress in their life. So I pursued further study in mind-body medicine. I got training and certification from the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. And I felt that I also needed to understand better root cause medicine. And so I studied functional medicine, and I recently passed my exam and earned my certification with the Institute for Functional Medicine. And the two together, along with, my basic medical education, has given me just a really great foundation to build upon to help people that I previously had a really hard time helping. And I've gathered more tools, and it's an exciting time in my career to put all of these together.
That's so beautiful, Dr. Julie. Would you say that back then when you took that course, what did you go to the course because you felt called to? Was there something in you that was calling you to explore the mind-body connection, or you just kind of went because you were invited and just...
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's just like, looks at fate. Well, what it was I was taking a course in behavioral medicine as part of my coursework. And part of the curriculum was this lecture on mind-body medicine. I did not pursue it. I didn't know it existed. And so it just kind of entered my life like that. And it just triggered a curiosity, an alignment. Like I just knew I had to learn more and understand better. And it is so pertinent to primary care medicine to be more effective, I've come to learn. And especially, in our clinic at the time.
Yeah, you touched a very important point, fate. And I think that there's certain things that don't escape us, no?
Yeah, and I'm grateful because it just sparked more and more learning. And sometimes it's so fascinating to look back at our journey and just see all the dots connecting. And this is how I got here. And just feeling grateful that that course was offered and I was there to attend that lecture.
Yeah, like you opened one door and then it just started like a domino effect, like just clearly showing where to go and connecting you more to your purpose,
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
beautiful. And what does a medicine with meaning mean to you personally?
Yeah. So I would say first off, it's knowing and understanding our why for taking active steps towards health, right? It may be that you want to feel good and have more energy so that you can be your best self for you, your children, your partner. Or it may be that you have a significant family history for a chronic disease like diabetes or dementia, and you want to prevent that by optimizing your lifestyle. Or you have a chronic condition and you want to take charge of your health so that you can live a long and healthy life. So it's very important to understand our why. And when we do understand the why, it decreases resistance and it gives us meaning and purpose for living a lifestyle that aligns with our health goals. So that's number one. I have a few more here that I thought about. Medicine with meaning is about asking why we have certain symptoms or conditions. And what are the lifestyle factors that make them worse? In other words, you want to examine what is the root cause. For instance, if I have irritable bowel syndrome or IBS, what are the factors that worsen my digestive symptoms? Is it eating certain foods? Is it high stress or poor sleep? And often in our modern busy lives, it's all of the above, right? The next question is, why do I have IBS? Is it dysbiosis, which is an imbalance of the gut microbiome? Or do I have low digestive enzymes, which are really important for breaking down food and optimizing digestion? The answer to these questions may require further evaluation by a functional medicine clinician, But I think it's obvious that treating the root cause is key to improving symptoms or any chronic condition. And then when you're able to transform your health and feel good, it's so empowering and it feels meaningful. And I would say that this is the best part of my work. It's so gratifying to witness transformation and see well-being. I think everyone that has dealt with a health issue, whether it's acute or chronic, everyone has a story to tell. And I love helping people connect the dots to their health story. This brings meaning and understanding, and it helps people better understand how and why they are in their current state of health. In fact, my favorite thing to show people is how they got healthy and how they got to feeling good. But you first have to understand, why is it that you're not feeling good? And certainly, again, when you know your root causes, you're able to make choices that support your health. And then for me personally, medicine with meaning is about the connections that I have with my patients. That's very important to me because it brings meaning to my work, and I find joy in those connections. And certainly building a relationship and forging trust are key to achieving positive health outcomes for my patients. So I would say that medicine with meaning is essential to health and well-being.
That's very powerful. Medicine with meaning. What made me think about it's also, having had a chronic inflammation and something chronic discomfort, I would call it, since a very young age, and not really having anyone to guide me to resolve it, but just people giving me something to, I don't know, maybe like antibiotics, but no other guidance, and me feeling worse and worse. I find it that a question that I came to ask myself is, what is my body trying to tell me? And as you were speaking, that came through as well. Like, there's meaning in this. Like, my body is trying to tell me something. Is it something that I'm doing that is harming my body, or something that might seem normal, but it's actually harming me? Or, is it my behavior? What is it? And I think that it's very beautiful that, we have people like you today that can guide others within that process, because it can be very exhausted. Like, even now I'm struggling with hypothyroidism, and I think that it's connected to back then when I was 15, and maybe during certain periods of time, like it would be good, and then not so good and not so good. But you try to go with a conventional medical approach, and you really don't get answers. It's like one pill,
Yeah.
and people feel frustrated because they don't find that guidance in the other areas of their lives, like you said.
Well, it's not entirely their fault, those doctors. They're, of course, well-intentional, well-intending and want to help. But it's also because they haven't had this breadth of education. And I would say that medical school and residency training is essential and important. It teaches us so much. But that's that sick care, right? And it doesn't help address people who aren't sick and need to be in a hospital, but are suffering from symptoms, especially ones that, we don't have an easy answer to, right? And there aren't tests that are available today to help us understand, what did you call it? Chronic inflammation and chronic, just
Dis-
ill-being.
yeah,
Yeah.
discomfort.
Discomfort. That's right. Thank you. And that requires a deeper understanding, a deeper knowledge of, what can be dysfunctional, and interpreting what your body is saying to you. And I would commend you at age 15, which is, young, to be asking the right questions, right? I think that's what I'm alluding to in medicine with meaning, is to ask questions. First is why, right? And keep asking why. And that inquiry will help us get to the root cause. And, sometimes it's pretty simple, it's just our lifestyle, right? Which we don't often want to look at, right? Well, why am I so tired? Well, I'm not getting enough sleep. Well, why am I not getting enough sleep? Well, I'm worried about this or that. And so, you can keep asking why, and it'll help get to the root cause. But at some point, if you get the answer and you make the changes, but it doesn't shift, well, then that's when you need a clinician to help you, and perhaps someone who's been trained in functional medicine or mind-body medicine. And these clinicians have a deeper understanding to be able to address some of that, chronic discomfort, chronic inflammation. And we know now in 2025 that inflammation is the root cause of so many, if not all, chronic conditions. When I first started, I would say most. And then I've transitioned to I think it's almost all chronic diseases.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's the link, right, between stress and inflammation. So it seems
Yes.
like a chain.
Yeah, definitely. And this is what excited me when I first learned about mind-body medicine. I learned at that time, what they knew about how stress impacted health. But we now know that stress leads to a cascade of, if I'll take a moment to explain that if this is a good time. Stress perceived in our brain triggers a series of reactions where it stimulates our nervous system to go into fight or flight. And that fight or flight innervates all of our organs, the various systems, our digestive system, our cardiovascular system, our immune system, and it does negatively impact. And we know that we need to be in parasympathetic, which is the relaxation response, in order for there to be good digestion, in order for there to be healing. And so we want to be in a better balance with our nervous system. But now we have more knowledge where stress can trigger the inflammatory cascade and all of the cytokines and interleukins that are released by our immune cells and promote inflammation on a cellular level in our system. And so you're right, stress does trigger inflammation directly in our body, but also indirectly, right? When we're feeling stress, if we don't have good coping mechanisms, we're going to reach for unhealthy habits, or we're not going to be perhaps as willing to keep up our healthy habits. That's when we really need them. And so stress can definitely impact us in multiple ways, and certainly our nervous system, which is so key to the functioning of our body.
And it's so interesting that you mentioned that. It makes me think about your time in El Salvador, where I wonder if people, were living in a certain way in community, maybe more relaxed because they felt safe. Um, do, do they know that that's that they're doing something that is healthy, or they just are, you know, because nowadays, life is so stressful that we found these ways of healing and this outlook on medicine. And we studied the blue zones, but I wonder if back then or in those places, people know that they're doing something to be healthy, or they just are living?
Yeah, I think they're just being, right? Being human beings versus human doings. I know that's been said by many people. You're right. It's our busy modern lives. And what it's done is created a mismatch between our genetics and how we don't have the environment that allows our human bodies to thrive. So in rural El Salvador, where, at that time, people were farming the land, they were doing things by hand, grinding corn by hand, and their lifestyles in their natural state was more aligned with our genetics. The food they ate was food they grew. There was there was like a little tienda, right? A little market where, they could go get, some, not so much fruit, but, vegetables, certainly processed snacks. But you could say that, their lives was more aligned with how we used to live previously. They were also, I was in a rural location. It was a small village, and it was just nature around us. We had to walk everywhere. I know that helps my nervous system, and I think that is how we lived thousands and thousands of years ago. And again, it's more aligned with our human past. And I think community was so obvious for them, right? Meaning that this is their village, this is where their family lives, and they had everything, all their human connections, their social connections right there. Whereas in our modern lives, many family members live elsewhere. We don't have that instant family connection. I mean, we make an effort, we call or text these days, which is probably not sufficient for that connection. And so I would say that human connection does build resilience, no doubt. And it puts their body in that parasympathetic state, which allows for healing, rejuvenation, optimal digestion, which is the root of every bodily function. I mean, we need to have a healthy gut for everything else to work. And I think in subsequent podcasts, we'll talk more about that. But thank you for bringing us back to some of those basics that we're missing in modern life. And I think that is really key. However, we can recreate, those basics of life, right? Now we have to go to the gym to get exercise. Eat natural food, right? Whole food, not from the supermarket, but, food that's from the earth, not so processed. Sleep well. They rose with the sun and went to sleep, as this, sunset. So matching the circadian rhythm with the sun. Yeah. And I guess, having a simpler life is almost luxurious. I guess we call that vacation.
Yeah, totally. It's planned for, and it is a vacation. And
Yeah.
sometimes you even come back a little bit more tired from your vacations.
Right, because we're trying to fit so much in.
Yeah, and that brings me back to the idea of what you talk about, of creating an ecosystem for health in our everyday lives. I know we touched a little bit on right now with talking about the basics, but what is that concept for you? Ecosystem for health, like creating
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, I would say it's understanding that, that in order to feel vibrant health, we need to understand the components of our whole self. And that is the mind, the body, and the spirit, and the interconnection between all three. I like to think of it as like a three-legged stool that supports good health. I think most of us understand it's important to take care of our physical health, right? That is very clear now and the lifestyle to support that. But we often don't think about tending our mind, right? And that we need to also take care of our mind. What do I mean by that? Well, we need to develop awareness. We need to notice our thoughts. Do our thoughts trigger the stress response in our body? Certainly our thoughts, when we repeat them over and over, they form our beliefs and our mindset. And that is really key to balancing our nervous system, right? And so, we want to tend to our body, our mind, and our spirit. And I think when we talked about El Salvador, we talked a lot about, what is spirit, right? In connection to our health. Well, we talked about community and the social connections, but it's also connecting with ourselves, our inner knowing, our inner wisdom. And I think in modern life, we don't take time to do that because we are so busy, right? I know being a busy working mom, I can say there are many, many years where it wasn't like I was disconnected from myself, but I certainly wasn't tapping into my inner wisdom, my inner knowing. I just didn't have time for it. I didn't make it a practice, right? And I think that is where we can align with our highest self, right? That's certainly where I want to operate from. And it's also where, we can tap into love and meaning and purpose. And that is really key to health. And I've seen that as a doctor, helping many people on their health journeys. Like, we can fix the body and, live that optimal lifestyle. And they can meditate and work on balancing their nervous system. But if the spirit is not aligned and you're not finding meaning and purpose for you or connecting with love, then it's not all going to work so well. And so when I talk about the ecosystem of health, it's really all of the above, putting it all together. It's simple, but not easy, I would say. And, that's the big picture, right? And there's so much more. And I'm so excited that I have an opportunity through this podcast to explore, what are the components of this ecosystem? But it's like any garden, you have to have all the components so that the plants are thriving. And so I think this podcast, Medicine with Meaning, is a beautiful opportunity for us to explore that and, to come along this journey with me. And, one thing that I've always say to my patients is that, I'm also a work in progress, and it's me working on myself that gives me data to help them, right? And as I help them, I learn from them. And so this is a journey, and I am excited to see how we can do that in a podcast. And, I know I'm going to learn and grow from this experience, and I hope that other people can. And that was my motivation to start this podcast. I feel like I've learned so much, and I am excited to guide others on their journey. And we're all on a journey, and we have to see what works for each of us. But I think the first step is asking those questions, right, that we talked about earlier.
It already feels like medicine with meaning. You talked about tuning into yourself, to your higher self, your inner wisdom. And we do live lives that are always projecting outside, like you mentioned, as a working mom, taking care of your kids and, your patients, and, it's always outside. And when do you have time to just live a little to like tune in and how are you doing? And I guess asking those questions also is giving yourself that time. No, why am I feeling like this? Even for that, you need to go inward a little bit.
Yes. Well, you said it earlier when you said, well, what is my body trying to tell me? And if we don't pause and listen, we're not going to understand. And there's a lot you can explore, certainly on your own. Sometimes you need professional help, right? And certainly if you have an ongoing symptom that you don't understand, you want to get a clinician to evaluate. But I think the first step is, checking in with yourself. And as a doctor, I can tell you that our physical symptoms are a sign of dysfunction. It's indicating that something is out of alignment and it needs our attention to address. And so, asking those why questions are really important, and seeing if there's some lifestyle shifts that you can make to feel better, right? Just some basics. I want to share a little bit about a symptom that I often have. I feel my stress in my muscular skeletal system. So I sometimes get neck and shoulder pain, usually my right side. And it's, kind of been triggered at times and I get, quite intense pain. I have a whole story about my shoulder, but I want to keep this one short. We can talk about that in another episode, but so it's just classic, like, you get a knot and there's tension. For me, this indicates that I am stressed and overwhelmed. And so, it's like my little indicator, my little stress meter. And so then I need to pause and ask, well, why am I feeling stressed and overwhelmed? Sit and ask. And so it could be that, well, maybe it's because you haven't been going outside and walking in the park, because that helps to calm your nervous system and it just feels so good for you, right? There are times in my life where I'm not doing that regularly. Or this is common, I'm having a lot of thoughts frequently that trigger my nervous system, right? These are those scary thoughts or anxious thoughts or critical thoughts, right? And I have to practice reframing from those thoughts. Those thoughts aren't true. This is after lots of practice or, help from a guide or a therapist, right? Or am I feeling stressed and overwhelmed because I am doing too much at home and at work? And so if that's the reason, then I need to pause, set some boundaries perhaps, or, get my husband and children to help out more. So you really have to do this inquiry, asking why, so that you can get at the root cause. And again, when you treat that root cause, you're more likely to make shifts in how you feel and improve whatever symptom. That is also part of the ecosystem of health. I don't know where we were going, but I wanted to get back to what you said earlier about what is my body telling me? What is this symptom telling me? And oftentimes it does have a clear message for us. It's whether we want to listen, we have time to listen, and sometimes we need more guidance, right? Through a healthcare professional.
Dr. Julie, so it's been such a great conversation so far. I'm really excited about where this is going. I think we're at the tip of the iceberg, finding meaning in our health and go a little bit deeper with that. As we close this episode, what is something two things. What is something that you would like people to remember from this? If there was just one thing, what is it? And also, if you could share maybe like a little practice that they could do to start reconnecting with themselves that maybe we can revisit in the next episode.
Yeah. I would say again, pause, right? Um, sit quietly. And I'm talking to meditation, just like sit with yourself. See how you're feeling in your body. Do you have any symptoms? See how you feel in your mind. Do you have a lot of thoughts that are triggering your nervous system? And then check in with your spirit, right? Are you finding meaning and purpose? That's a lot, to do all at once, right? But I think the main thing is to pause and notice, because it's that awareness that is the first step of meaningful change. If you don't have the awareness, you don't know where to start. And in our busy lives, I think, so often we don't pause to check in with ourselves, right? So that's, I think, what I want people to remember from today's episode. It's a way of reconnecting with yourself, right? That pause. And then, one small doable practice, I would say, take 1 minute to practice deep breathing. And, it's very simple. I'm not going to give any instructions on how to breathe, but well, a little bit. The only instruction is to make sure the out breath is slow and gentle. That's all. Breathe however you like. I like to breathe in through my nose, breathe out through my mouth. That feels most comfortable for me, but do whatever it is that feels right for you. We all know how to breathe. In fact, the breath is so nourishing and it is vital for life, right? And deep breathing is a powerful tool because it calms our nervous system. It triggers the vagus nerve, and that stimulates parasympathetic nervous system. That again is our relaxation response. We also call it rest and digest. Right. So those people who have digestive symptoms, it's important to trigger parasympathetic activity. And when our nervous system is calm, we have a better chance of accessing that inner knowing, that higher self, that inner wisdom. And that's where most of us want to operate, right? That's where I try. I certainly don't most days. But it takes practice, right? And just start with 1 minute and see where that goes. And, we'll keep adding, take one step at a time, I think is, the best approach. Start small. So breath work is one of my favorite tools. And I know that's one of the tools that you shared with me that, you have expertise in. So I look forward to learning from you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Julie. You really brought in that sense of calmness as you advised to breathe deeper. We do forget. And I think that it takes like a couple of breaths and we're already feeling a lot better. So thank you for that. And well, I think it's time to close off this episode. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you do. I'm certainly looking forward to everything that is to come to uncover and have more insightful conversations. Is there anything else that you would want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I would say that, I am very excited to go on this journey together. Um, I think life is so interesting in how it unfolds. And if we allow and just be present, we just get so much out of it. And I am learning so much from myself and practicing. And I know that it's not easy. And I hope to guide people and make it simpler.
Thank you so much, Dr. Julie. I'm sure this is the start of a really beautiful journey for all of us. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you in the upcoming episode. And if this episode of Medicine with Meaning resonated with you in any way, please give us a follow, share it with people that you know that this could benefit. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.
Thank you.